My name is Phil Delestrez. I'm the Northern Resource Manager with Georgia State Parks. And as a resource manager, we're kind of a unique unit unto ourselves. We don't do any of the day-to-day park operations. We don't use the cash register. We don't check people in. We don't mow grass. Well, usually we don't. So what we do is we focus on resource management issues with different parks. We're sort of consultants, but we're also there as support, and we often get involved with the jobs that we have to do.
Phil, is when you say resource management, are you talking about wildlife, forestry, water, fish, all resources?
Yes, kind of the pillars of our being is exotic plants, issues with state parks, deer management for those parks where we do manage deer hunts, so that's part of our job. Prescribed fire, which is a pretty big part of our job now, and hazardous trees. We're sort of the liaison between the parks and setting up folks who are trained arborists to help with dangerous trees and trees that are precariously leaning over cabins or picnic areas or playgrounds, that type of thing.
Plenty of those.
We help with storm cleanup a lot. If there's like a major storm like Hurricane Michael, we're sort of the custodians of a lot of equipment for state parks. We have skid steers, we have big grinding heads that go on the skid steers, grapple buckets. We have a lot of chainsaw training, that type of thing. So some of what we do is actually training park staff with herbicides, with chainsaws. Hopefully this year we'll be training some park staff with fire preparation, which will kind of make it easier for us to do some prescribed burns.
How many people in DNR are there with your type of responsibility or in staff, managers and staff? What can you describe that across the state? Or
Sure. We have a program manager who's my supervisor, and he's statewide. His name's Brian Nichols. I'm in the northern part of the state, so kind of the I-20 corridor north. So that's from like Chattahoochee Bend to Panola Mountain to Mistletoe. All those parks along that kind of I-20 corridor. Everything north of that are parks that I help with. My counterpart in the south has everything south of that area. So he actually has less parks, but a lot more area to cover. And different problems in the south. He doesn't have any deer hunts. But he has to do a lot more prescribed burning down there because of the habitats that his parks have, like the wiregrass and longleaf pine. Our burns are a little smaller up here, and we tend to have different, I guess, formulas, mechanisms for how we do it based on that.
Does the state park actually manage with timber harvest?
Yes, timber harvest is also kind of part of our jurisdiction. We work with other agencies on all these issues too. We work with Georgia Forestry Commission and their forest health people with exotic plant type situations. We work with Georgia Power quite a bit. They also have some expertise in exotic plant control, but they also help us a lot with the hazardous trees. If there's like a big type of operation with hazardous trees, we'll either consult with our forest management unit in DNR or Georgia Power or both, trying to get those situations resolved. So we do a lot of on-the-ground work, but we also do a lot of behind-the-scenes type work as well.
How do you, Phil, how do you think your volunteer or previous work experience helped to prepare you for the position that you have now?
I actually started my career as a volunteer for the Fish and Wildlife Service to get experience. And that was so important to me. And I realized back then, and I'm really glad I did it because it shaped the whole way I perceive folks who want to volunteer to get that experience. I take it very, very seriously. So if we have volunteers, I like to get them as much training as I possibly can in those areas that they want to learn. So it's not one of those deals with us where you come and volunteer, here, go to work, let me know when you're done, and we'll send you home. It's never like that. We always work out there with our volunteers. We have a good time, and hopefully we impart something on the volunteers that's valuable to them.
Speaking of volunteers, it seems like a great opportunity for our students to get engaged with DNR and with working with you and all the activities you have. Can you explain maybe one of the opportunities you may have coming up that students could be interested in getting involved with?
Yes, we have a lot. Um, one of the challenges we have with state parks is hemlock trees. And a few years ago, well, actually about a decade ago, they started getting the woolly adelgid, which kills the hemlocks. If you go through the national forest up in this part of the state, a lot of times you'll see just these huge skeletons of old hemlocks that were killed by this aphid.
Yeah.
So in a lot of our parks, we have control measures where we go out and treat the trees, and the treatment we use lasts about 5 years. So next spring, next year, we have a whole bunch of trees we have to retreat at Cloudland Canyon State Park. And then successively after Cloudland, the years to come, we have they're all lined up and stacked up.
Go across the state, huh?
Yes. So this year was a little bit of a reprieve. Nothing was really due this 2020. But 2021, we have a whole bunch of trees that we have to start retreating at Cloudland Canyon State Park.
What kind of skills would a student need to volunteer for such an experience?
Just being in a pretty good physical shape. We have to navigate some slopes and do a fair amount of walking. We carry these soil injectors with the pesticide that we use to soil inject under the trees. So it's really fun work. It's gratifying, but it can be a little physical challenging.
Okay. Cool.
What are the best things you like about your job, Phil?
Oh gosh, I get to I almost feel guilty sometimes because we're sort of in this, utopia type situation with resource management. We don't have to deal with the day-to-day challenges that our field staff have to deal with. We get to deal with the best of everything all the time. So I love working with all the state parks. There's different managers, they'll have different personalities, different assistant managers, maintenance managers. So I'm lucky I get to travel around and meet all these different characters.
Oh, that's good.
And form these working relationships, but also with other organizations. The National Forest, we work with them quite a bit. They're one of our partners up in this part of the state. So the U.S. Forest Service, the Nature Conservancy, our wildlife conservation section with DNR, we work with them a lot. Biologists, volunteers. I've met some great volunteers this year who've kind of become our friends, and we call on them to help us with different things all the time. They might be friends, members, volunteers at another park, but we're actually getting them to cross not just park boundaries but regional boundaries to come and help us do work when we really need it. So we're always reaching out to different folks, different partners, different volunteers to help us get our work done and meet our goals.
That's great. What, maybe in closing, what sort of advice or suggestions would you have for students that would like to work for the DNR within the state parks and historic sites, for them to consider as they prepare in the next year or so for jobs?
Well, Matt could probably speak better to this because we're such a small unit. But if you want to work in the resource management side of things, certainly you better have a passion for that type of work, because you're not going to get rich doing it. So you better love what you do. You better be satisfied with that aspect of the job. So, there's always, you got to weigh one thing against the other. But it's a very gratifying place to work. There's a niche in parks for this type of work that we do, and I think it's really important because we have a lot of public land under state parks, and we have a lot of really interesting habitat types, ecology, and we need stewards to take care of these places so that our future generations can come to a place and see these areas that, some of them are pretty much like you're walking into them for the first time. Just like the first people in the United States would have seen,
Yeah.
almost like that. So that's what we're trying to keep, the native plants, the native flora, the native fauna. So our future generations can go to a place and see a longleaf pine tree community, or see a bog,
Yeah.
a native bog.
Like here in the mountains.
Yeah, or even a hardwood forest,
Mhm.
an upland hardwood forest or a lowland hardwood
Yeah.
forest. They're different, but you want to see those. You don't want to see a wall of Chinese privet and
Absolutely. Yeah.
autumn olive and all those things. So,
Sure.
that's the gratifying part of the job.
So students need a good pair of leather gloves, a water bottle, and good hiking shoes, and an attitude that works.
Yeah. We had a fire crew this year, and they had a motto, and they'd say a chainsaw and a good attitude. We can get anything done.
That's
And,
true.
Um,
That's true.
and like I said, we love working with folks. We love having a good time and enjoying the work while we're doing it. I mean, you're out in some of the most beautiful places in Georgia,
Absolutely.
which is one thing I forgot to mention. Is one of the aspects of this job I love is seeing all the different places that we have in this state.
Because you go, as you say, from I-20 almost at the fall line, since north. That's a neat change.
And there's some really different places, from Tallulah Gorge to Cloudland Canyon to Sloppy Floyd, to here at Unicoi State Park. There's just a ton of different places and habitats and scenery and different things at each
Great.
park.
Well, thank you, Phil.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time today.
No problem.